We locked that toy that scared us in a closet. But things turned out to be even worse from the first day, since we heard noises coming from inside, as if it were trying to get out. Good evening, community. Thank you for being here, for letting us into your devices with a new dose of paranormal stories, tales that will leave you thinking, that will stay with you long after you finish this episode. Today's stories, especially the second one, are very intense. They deal with topics that are quite delicate, those where you can't even say the word, and that involve a person attempting to end their life. We're going to take them very seriously, and although you already know this, I want to take the opportunity to remind all the depressed people out there who feel alone. You are not. You are part of this community, of this family, and whatever comes, we go through it together. You can always count on us. So it's time to delve into today's dark stories. But I want to send a hug to the people who have shared their stories tonight, and to all of you as well. A hug that transcends this microphone. Turn off the light and listen. Tales of the Night is beginning. Hello, my name is Leonardo. I currently live in the United States, but I'm originally from Mexico. I recently started listening to your podcast, and although I've always been skeptical about these topics, I've remembered certain experiences I lived through and that I never found a way to explain. We recently moved to a house with a very large yard, but this story began before, when we still lived in small apartments. My mom has always been very superstitious, more so since years ago she took ayahuasca, a drink that, according to her, allowed her to see her past life. Since then, her faith in the spiritual intensified. My dad, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. Skeptical, closed off, and doesn't like to talk about these things. Once an aunt gave my mom a decorative gnome as a gift. It was small, with a smiling face, dark green clothes, and a pointed little hat. My mom asked my sisters and me to treat it as if it were one more member of the family. At that moment it made us laugh, but we accepted without a problem. We put it on a shelf in the dining room. At first everything continued as normal. The gnome was just there, like one more decoration, but little by little, as crazy as it may sound, strange things started happening to us. One day when we were alone at home, my two sisters and I, the youngest, who was then 5 years old, went to the bathroom and suddenly I noticed she had already been in there for almost an hour. I approached worried, and just as I knocked on the door, I heard how she was laughing. "Hey, is everything okay?" I asked. The laughter cut off abruptly. My little sister answered me very calmly. "Yes, Angel, it's just that he makes me laugh a lot." "Who?" I asked her. "My new friend," she said without thinking. That froze my blood. I asked her to open the door, and when she did, she ran out, laughing as if nothing had happened. I checked the bathroom carefully, but found nothing out of place. That night, when my mom arrived, I told her everything. She told me not to worry, that she would take care of it. I thought that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. Over time, small but disturbing things began to occur. Objects would disappear and then appear in impossible places. My keys, my charger, my wallet. We all thought it was carelessness until it started to become a constant. My older sister stopped sleeping alone. She felt like someone was watching her at night. We discovered the little one talking to herself around the house, and suddenly she would tell us things like, "My friend told me that he doesn't like you." One day I woke up and felt something was wrong. When looking for my glasses on the nightstand, I realized they were broken, split in two, as if someone had broken them with complete intention. That's when I said enough. My mom, far from ignoring it, accepted that the gnome could be doing things. That same night, she put it in a wooden box along with salt, holy water, and some prayers that a lady had taught her. We locked it in a closet, but it was worse. That same week, the noises began. Footsteps in the hallway when we were all in the living room. Things falling, doors slamming shut. On one occasion, the whole family was watching TV when we clearly heard someone running down the hallway, but we were all there in the living room. My little sister stopped talking about her friend, but she started having nightmares in which she would cry in her sleep and say, "Don't take me away, please." One night while my dad was sleeping, he, who had always been the most skeptical, woke up screaming because someone had whispered right next to him. It was the first time he accepted that something was very wrong. We didn't know what else to do until a neighbor recommended that we get rid of the gnome definitively, burying it far from the house, in loose earth and discarding it with respect. We did it, although we didn't know if it would work. And since then, everything started to calm down. However, upon moving to the new house, something I already knew returned the first night. That same feeling. Now it was because I heard a kind of mocking laughter that I first heard in the distance. Then I felt it was coming from under my bed. The next day, my younger sister stared at a corner of the yard for several minutes and said they were talking to her from there. I don't know if we really got rid of that, if that is really possible, or if it came with us. That's the story so far. Thank you for listening to it. Hello, community. I would like to share with you a story that was told to me a few days ago. A friends gathering went on too long, and my partner, another friend, and I decided to take a rideshare service to get home safely. The driver was very kind to us, and the opportunity arose to talk with him in depth about what brought him to Tijuana, since he has a particular accent. He told us he was from Guatemala, that he came looking for a better life, was about to start a business, and to cover his expenses, he decided to dedicate a few hours to working as a driver. During the nights, the conversation continued, and with it, of course, the question of whether he had experienced anything strange during his trips. This is what he told us. Without a doubt, one of the most impactful stories anyone has told me. I have always been a very sensitive person to certain things. Since I was a child, I sense presences, and on occasions I have come to see people who are no longer here. A few months ago, they requested a service like this from me. Around 1 in the morning, in a neighborhood between Rosarito and Santa Fe. If you know around there, you'll know that many of those streets still have dirt roads, and you have to be very careful not to damage the car. The user and I were on our way back. I was moving very cautiously since not only was the ground very uneven, but also very dark and alone. All of a sudden, I felt that sensation in my body. I never know how to explain it, but it's very uncomfortable. I felt a bad presence. I didn't want to look too closely, but inevitably, I turned to my right, and about 3 meters from here. Over there is a woman with a black cape that reached the ground, very dirty, especially near the feet. She was almost with her back turned, half turned around. I wanted to accelerate, but the car simply stopped moving forward. It was on, but it wasn't responding. The woman began to turn around slowly, and although I was paralyzed with fear, I couldn't take my eyes off her. I noticed that in one hand she had a lit candle. I can't explain to you the terror I had of seeing her face. I just know I didn't want to do it. My foot was all the way down on the accelerator. I noticed she had very long hair. As she turned toward me, in her other hand she had a bone. A very long bone. As soon as I saw it, the car reacted and I got out of there as fast as I could. I'm just grateful that I could never see her face. If I had, I think I would have gone crazy. Hello, Uriel. My name is Diana, and I'm from Monterrey, Nuevo León. For years, I've been listening to the stories that have been shared in this great community, and for the first time, I've decided to share one of my paranormal experiences, the most important one, the hardest one, also considering that it's a special year to do so. It's the first time I dare to write about this, and maybe I'll ramble a lot, but I hope you can summarize it in that magical and terrifying way that characterizes you. You see, it all started when I was 16 years old. At that time, we had an event in my family, that led me to a horrible depression that later led me to 3 suicide attempts. The first and most important for this story was on line 2 of the subway at the San Nicolas station. It was nighttime. I was on my way back home late from high school, and I felt, seriously, at that moment I felt like I couldn't take it anymore. I was terrified. I felt trapped, with no escape. It was something I felt I couldn't talk to anyone about except my sister. Something that made me feel hopeless because I knew perfectly well there was no escape, only confrontation, and that was the last thing I wanted. So there, in the middle of the crowd, the platform being full, I looked down toward Universidad Avenue, full of traffic, noise, life passing by. The subway here is not underground, but elevated on bridges. The stations let you see out to the city. I felt that there was my way out, my salvation. I was crying. I tried to hide it, but I realized that several people around me knew about me when they saw me, but nothing more. I left my backpack on the ground. A train arrived and left. Right there, I decided to climb onto the barrier. I was sure I could. The next one, end it all and rest. However, when the next train was approaching, when I gathered the courage, someone pulled me. I felt as if they had pulled my blouse and had thrown me down from it. They made me fall back onto the platform. Dazed by the blow, which was quite painful, I searched angrily for who had gotten involved where nobody had called them, but there was no one near me. I looked carefully. There was no one on the entire platform. Some people were just starting to climb the stairs to there. I felt chills, and with a certain fear of the situation, I chose to take my backpack and leave. I didn't have to take the subway to get to my house, so running I went down the stairs and went to the bus stop, which at that time was already quite deserted. It was a route not very busy during the night, since it was a bus that made a short route, and to top it off, it always took a long time to pass. It's now that I was there standing along with 2 ladies and a gentleman who fortunately arrived a little after me. I felt observed the whole time from above, from the subway platform I had just left. Weeks later, due to the situation at my house, I came to forget at times that strange situation that had prevented a plan, but my depression continued and my feelings of hopelessness as well. The truth is, I was looking for another opportunity again, another small moment of courage to try again in another place or in another way. However, when those thoughts were most present, that's when I saw it for the first time. I don't remember the exact day. I just know it was shortly after the first half of March 2011, since I had just turned 17. It was nighttime, and as all people from Monterey know, the weather in March can be as hot as it is cold. That night was cold. Not cold enough to be shivering, but cold enough not to want to leave your warm bed. Your feet would get cold if you walked only in socks. My mom, my little dog, and I were the only ones at home. My sister had gone to stay at her boyfriend's house, and my mom's husband had had the night shift, so we were alone. It was 2 a.m. I was there, in my mom's room, watching the TV that she and her partner had. I, who wanted to be lying down, and the other TV was in the dining room. It was then that I heard my little dog whimper. It was as if she had wanted to cry, but the whine had gotten stuck. It was a strange noise, and I talked to her, but she didn't pay attention to me. She was a little dog I had had since she was born. She had always followed me. Our connection was unique, and she always obeyed me, so you'll understand my strangeness at that moment. I took advantage of the commercials to get up. My mom was already sound asleep, and she used to wake up easily if a light turned on. So in the dark, I left the bedroom that had the door open. Our house was the typical Infonavit house, social interest housing. You know, small houses very popular in Mexico. 1 floor, 1 bathroom, 2 bedrooms and dining room, entrance hall and kitchen almost stuck together. So my mom's room was right next to the bathroom. But although I had the feeling to turn on that light to see something in the rest of the house, I decided not to. The street lamps already illuminated what was necessary. The interior through the curtain, at least I wasn't going to bump into some chair before reaching the sideboard that was at the entrance, which was the one that illuminated the most. But on my short path, I found my little dog. She was in a corner near the closed bathroom door. She was shaking. I called her several times and she didn't pay attention to me. I even crouched down to pet her. She was very cold and she didn't take her gaze away from the door. Worried about feeling her like that she might have something, I hurried and without taking my eyes off her, I got up, fixed my gaze forward to go quickly to turn on the light. But I ran into a tall body, dark, so dark that it seemed to really swallow up the little bit of light that came in through the windows. I froze and felt my heart beating in my throat. I didn't want to raise my gaze to try to see the face, if it had one, so I could only close my eyes tightly and hold my breath, as if that were going to help me. I felt fear many times in my life, but in front of that I really can't say I felt terror. It was more a strong impression. I didn't know how to explain it well. I felt like minutes passed, but maybe it was only a couple of seconds when I heard my mom call me from the room. And just then I was able to open my eyes. I no longer saw anything. My little dog was stuck to my legs, and a little agitated I ran to turn on the light. There was no sign of any intruder, and deep down I knew that wasn't something human. If it was real, I simply couldn't do it. I never told my mom anything about what happened. But this story, of course, doesn't end here. For something I told you that this year is special. And this is because that shadow, that being has been appearing since then every certain number of years. The second time it appeared to me was in the year 2015. I was pregnant. I don't remember exactly how many months I was, but my belly was already big enough that it was hard for me to walk around without resting. It was also nighttime. On that occasion, past 1 o'clock, I was already living with my husband. We were in the living room. Since my depression began, I suffer from constant insomnia, so it's normal for me to always stay awake until very late at night. I was playing Metro for the first time, a horror game that had me quite obsessed at that time. My husband was sleeping right behind me, on a wide couch, while I was on an individual one in front of the TV, quite close to it. In fact, as I like to play, and I have to clarify something before continuing, my life, although without a doubt had improved in moving away from my family and being with my partner, I continued to suffer ups and downs. My depression and anxiety were sometimes worse, I think because of the pregnancy. And yes, although my husband never knew, at that time the idea of suicide came to mind again. There were days when I could easily distract myself with video games, but sometimes, even so, I didn't stop feeling miserable, wishing to end it all, even coming to want to throw myself in front of the train tracks that pass right in front of the house. I was entertained playing, without wanting to look away from the screen when suddenly I had that same feeling of being watched. That natural warning that the brain usually gives us to alert us that we are under someone's surveillance. At that moment I thought it was my husband, since he has a very heavy gaze and I always feel it. However, he didn't say anything. Out of the corner of my eye I tried to see him, and I found him stuck to the back of my chair, standing straight up, waiting patiently for me to pause the game. "Wait, my love. Let me get away from here, and I'll pause it," I told him, with my attention on the screen, puzzled that he didn't speak or make some comment about my very novice way of playing as he used to do, always as a joke. Finally, I was able to pause the game and I turned around. My heart. Again, I felt it in my throat when I saw my husband. He was still sleeping like a rock, even with his mouth open, but I knew there was someone standing right next to me. Just a moment ago. Since I had moved in with my husband, nothing strange had happened until that moment, and the familiar feeling told me. I knew somehow that it was that dark being I had seen when I was 17 years old. I couldn't keep playing. I turned everything off and had to wake up my husband so we could go sleep together in our bedroom. He still knew nothing about this whole strange situation, of course, and after that second time, I told him about both. Thinking about it, we realized the similarity of the situation of when that being had made its presence near me, in my depression, or rather at the limit to where my depression took me. After its first appearance, my life suffered a first great change. Part of the situation at my house, of the fear that something terrible might happen sometime with my stepfather, and the fact that my mom seemed not to recognize it. So right after the first time I saw that being, I gathered courage and faced the situation, being kicked out of my house, but freed from what was now only a hell for me. On the second occasion, I suffered my second great change, the birth of my daughter, and with that the cold understanding of the cruelty of the people who should have protected me and didn't, finally accepting my reality and the fact that that shouldn't overshadow the joy of having my baby. However, this doesn't end here, since the third and so far last appearance of that unknown being covered in darkness was in 2021, when my daughter was still 5 years old. It had been a very hard time because of COVID, although thanks to destiny neither my husband, nor my daughter, nor I got it, although he never stopped working at any time during the pandemic. I suppose we also have to thank his good health and physical condition. At that time they were giving vaccinations, and I remember the day it was my turn. My husband worked at night, and at home it would only be my daughter and me. We were both in the living room. She was asleep and I was watching television. It was very hot. Summer was approaching, since in Monterey it doesn't have to be June for us to be burning up. However, the vaccine gave me a strong reaction and caused me a fever that I really felt like I was dying. I had 3 blankets on top of me and still I didn't stop shaking. At times I lost consciousness and I really didn't even have the energy to move. After I started to get worse, I didn't want to call my husband. The last time I had seen the time it was 2 a.m. and they didn't allow him to leave the store. I also didn't wake up my daughter to scare her. I remember how at one point the television blinked. It was as if there had been a fleeting power outage of less than a second. But when it lit up the room again with the light from the TV, I saw it standing behind me. Just the same, motionless, silent. I knew it was looking at me. I knew I only had to turn my face, raise my gaze to see its face. But I couldn't. I didn't dare. And next to me there was only darkness, like a body, sounds of black color. A mannequin by my side without a face. I was already very weak. I couldn't speak. I couldn't feel anything else. Suddenly, I didn't even hear the television. I simply closed my eyes and fell asleep. When I woke up, I was soaked in cold sweat, but I was no longer shaking. I felt terrible, but the fever seemed to have finally decreased enough for me to be able to get up, to remove the blankets from on top of me. My daughter was still very asleep and the TV remote was strangely far from me on the furniture next to the TV, as if someone had put it there. This year my daughter turns 10 years old. It's exactly 5 again since the last time I saw it. Maybe, although soon. Maybe next year it will be a matter of seeing it. But something inside me tells me that yes, I'm going to see it before June of 2026, the date when my daughter would turn 11. I've searched for information regarding this type of being, but the most I've found is about shadow people, and what everyone talks about them is bad. But that confuses me, because I consider that this being that attached itself to me that time at the subway station, or that came to me in some way, doesn't come to seek my harm, and I already explained the reasons. I have no one to share this story with without them telling me it's bad, that it's something that comes to steal my energy, etc., etc. So I hope the community can provide some comment or explanation of what that being could be, that only appears when I'm at the limit, moments in my life. I don't know how to explain it. I don't even believe in any religion. Hello, Uriel. I wanted to share this story with the community for a long time. I'll omit the name of my city because we don't know with exact certainty what that terrible thing was that happened to us. That evil that took over our family. It all began in mid-October of last year. there was a strong argument between my aunt and uncle, the younger sister and the older brother of my mom. Overnight, my Aunt Lupita decided to go live with a guy she met. He was older and had a family, which he left to go with her. My Uncle Gabriel was very angry, because that didn't seem right to him. He said it wasn't fair and that she should return home. In a fit of anger, he decided to go to a witch doctor, one of those who do cleansings and work like love spells, separations, and things like that. He never told us exactly what he asked for, what they did. He has a business where my brother and my mom work. One day my mom told me that when she arrived at work it smelled very bad, like sulfur and putrefaction. She checked the house, and under the altar where they have some saints, she found some black candles wrapped in aluminum foil that caused that smell. That day they argued, since my mom didn't think it was right that he was doing that without really knowing what it implied. In my family, we don't believe in those things of witchcraft, so my uncle came to reason and threw them away. He only said that it had been easy for him to do it because people assured him it would work and that his sister would return home. Anyway, he threw them away. We forgot about the matter. Only a few days passed and my uncle began to get sick. He deteriorated physically tremendously. He lost about 10 kilos in a few days, and he was always tired. Since he felt bad, my mom asked him to stay a few days at our house and he accepted. But every day he was worse. Community. He had a very, very strange look. I'm a nurse and I was very afraid to see him like that, because I've seen that look before in patients who are about to pass away. It will sound crazy, but when someone has that look in the hospital, we say they're already leaving, that they have the look of death. He kept not sleeping, and when he managed to rest a little at things, he was incoherent. We took him to the doctor and they decided to admit him to do tests. But on the second day in the hospital, he completely lost his sanity. He no longer recognized us. He said things without sense. They did many tests on him and they all came out fine, but he no longer had the strength to lift a spoon or go to the bathroom by himself. We took care of him between my mom and me. Sometimes he was fine. He would chat as always, although weak. Other times he would get aggressive and bring out strength that we didn't know where it came from. Not even 3 nurses could handle him. One day when my mom was with him at the hospital, she saw that they admitted an elderly lady. A woman who looked at her strangely and laughed was taking care of her. That caused her discomfort, but she didn't pay attention. Worried about how my uncle was, she didn't want to fixate on that. The surprise came later. One day when we were at home and they knocked on the door. Upon opening, my mom was very, very scared. It was the woman from the hospital. We didn't know how she knew where we lived. She told her, "Your brother is not sick. He doesn't have any health problem. They want to kill him. It's very strong work, but I can do a reading for him and remove it." My mom thanked her, but told her no. As I said before, we didn't believe in that. As the days went by, my uncle got worse. One afternoon I went to take care of him at the hospital, and very restless, he asked me to come closer. He confessed to me that the devil visited him every day, that a devil visited him and laughed at him. He said no one would believe him because they would think he was still hallucinating. He also talked about a girl with many eyes on her face who would approach to touch him, and when she did, he felt like she got inside his skin. I called my mom and asked her to bring a priest. I thought that maybe that would calm him down. Not even 15 minutes passed when a priest entered. He walked directly over to the curtains of the patient who was in front of my uncle. I followed him to talk to him, to ask for help for us. But when I pulled the curtain, there was no one. It terrified me because I had seen him enter with my own eyes, because there was no way he could have left without me seeing him. Because I was afraid that the hallucinations were now reaching me too. I told my mom and she told me that she had already talked to the priest from the neighborhood church, that he would go as soon as he could because he had several masses. That night my brother went to my uncle's business to pick up some things. He came back pale, trembling, very scared. He said that when he entered, he saw a shadow pass by that ignored him, that he wanted to think he was being suggestible. But when he left, he heard a man's voice, very, very deep, like something out of a horror movie. It yelled at him from inside. He turned around and says that what he saw left him breathless. It was a hooded figure, with its face covered. At first he thought it was floating, but little by little in the darkness, he managed to see that it was standing on a pile of rats and cockroaches that wouldn't stop moving and formed a more demonic, terrifying mass. That's the only way he could describe it. He doesn't know how he ran out, but he arrived home in crisis. If I hadn't seen how he looked, how the poor guy was, I wouldn't have believed what he said he saw that night. After that, we began to believe what the woman from the hospital had told us. The ladies who were taking care of other patients at the hospital told us that during the early morning twice they saw a girl approaching my uncle. A girl that no one knew where she came from or where she went when they went to look for her. We said prayers with him every day. It seemed that calmed him down. He was admitted for almost a month. They kept doing tests on him, but no one knew what he had. On December 12th, the day of the Virgin of Guadalupe, the doctors asked us to come say goodbye. They told us he wouldn't make it through the night. So my dad arrived early with the priest from the neighborhood to give him last rites. On the way, he told him everything. The priest spent a good while with him and then told us, he's not going to die. That evil that's killing him is going to leave. Nothing is more powerful than God. You have faith and don't let evil make you doubt. Never, not even for a moment. That same night, my Aunt Lupita, the cause of everything, whispered to my mom that she would stay to take care of him, that she needed to ask him for forgiveness. She also confessed to her that the man she was with had a protector who believes a lot in witchcraft, that they had returned the evil to my uncle. That's why he got like that, but that they had already stopped everything, and so it was. A few days later, my uncle improved. He no longer had that look or that craziness. He was himself again. They discharged him. He was very thin, but well. His sister told him that he forgave her, that it was her life and she could live it however she wanted. Today I can tell you, community, that my uncle is well. We believe it was our faith that saved us. We believe that God is stronger than any witchcraft. But we also learned that you shouldn't play with those things. If you don't have knowledge, don't get involved. Don't even get close, because evil exists and is capable of terrible things, of things you couldn't imagine. Hello, my name is Thomas. Approximately 4 years ago, I used to visit my great-grandmother's house. At that time, she was 85 years old. The house was very cozy. I remember we always played cards and bet on any silly thing. One day not very different from the others. As always, I took out the cards, the chips to play poker. But this time she proposed the bet. She told me, "What if this time we bet how much life I have left?" The truth is, it seemed like a strange, macabre proposal to me. It left me thinking, but I assumed it was just another one of her jokes. Another unimportant bet. She bet that she had 2 weeks left. I told her that she had at least 4 more years, that I would bet $5. But she looked at me seriously and said, "Son, if I win the bet, I'm going to come visit you." After that strange bet, we played normally. Later, I went home. When I arrived, I told my mom what my great-grandmother had said. She laughed, and that left me calmer, thinking that she was just joking and that everyone else would see it that way too. But a week after that night, my great-grandmother was diagnosed with cancer, a cancer that had been advancing through her body silently for a long time. By the second week, she passed away. That night, after receiving the news, I felt something very strange in my room. A kind of fog that was invisible but that could be felt, that made me see everything as blurry. Among so many things that happened that day, the visit from family and friends, the exhaustion, the sadness, The truth is, I had completely forgotten about the bet we had made. I just lay down to sleep. At approximately 12 in the morning, in the middle of a darkness so deep that I couldn't distinguish anything around me, I heard someone entering my bedroom. I realized because the floors were wooden, because they creaked when someone walked. I thought it was my brother coming to look for something, but there was something that didn't add up. The room began to fill with a smell, with a very peculiar perfume, very similar, very much like the perfume my grandmother used to wear. Paralyzed by fear, I couldn't move, and then I felt how someone or something sat on the edge of my bed. As soon as I felt that weight, a strange sensation ran through my body. And it was worse when that something started to whisper. A song my great-grandmother used to sing. "Go to sleep now, for the devil is coming." I don't know how much time passed. For me, it was a lot until I felt it get up from the bed. I heard the footsteps again, the creaking of the floor. But now it was moving away more and more. I couldn't see anything. The darkness was total, but I did feel. I felt a presence. I felt like something was watching me. I felt it as if someone were staring at me just centimeters away from me. I couldn't move. After a while, the footsteps returned, this time moving away down the hallway. Little by little, that feeling of oppression disappeared. The atmosphere began to calm down. Everything ended when the bedroom already felt normal, when I no longer felt that heaviness, that invisible fog that filled everything. But just then, I heard how the house door closed, as if someone had slammed it with force. That slam woke up my mom. She went to check and then immediately came in to ask me if I had heard that, if I had just come in. I didn't know what to answer her. I simply told her that I hadn't gotten up.